All right, I think we're about 10 o'clock. I figure we'll go ahead and get started here. My name is Dave Melton. I'm with Bermuda Technologies. I'll be giving a talk here on DoD line of business applications and our product Defense Ready, which we've deployed on Azure as a SaaS offering. Just a quick note as well, if you have any questions for Microsoft, I know Greg Myers is here. He's the VP of Federal, right here on the right side of the room. If you have any questions, please feel free afterwards to talk to me or Greg as well. We can certainly help you out with any questions you've got. Just a basic overview of what we're going to do today. I'm going to give the story of Bermuda, the story of Defense Ready and Dynamics, our journey to the cloud, which is going to be the primary focus here today. And then I'll actually do a quick demonstration of Defense Ready so you can get an idea of the types of solutions that our customers are able to take advantage of now in Azure DoD. So the story starts in 2007. Back then, our company had been around for about 10 years or so, and we had been building applications from the ground up. It's dirty work. It was hard. We did it on site a lot of cases. And I mean, you can see here, this is our team photo from that year. It's a little rough going, but you know, our CEO recognized that there's got to be a better way to do this. There's got to be some other process or some other platform that we can look to. And back then, he went to a Microsoft conference and discovered something called Microsoft Dynamics CRM. Now, back then, Dynamics CRM was used to do sales and marketing, which in DoD, not really applicable. Maybe you can make an argument for recruiting, but even then, they're not necessarily closing leads with dollar amounts tied to them. It's more about convincing someone to enlist or join the military. It looks something like this. So CEO comes back, tells us about CRM, and we look at this and we think, you got to be kidding me. Like revenue generated by campaigns, leads by sources. There's nothing here for DoD. Today, the offering is called Dynamics 365. So if you were to go look this up now, this is the new branding, this is the new logo. It does a few more things here today, but you see the different apps that come out of the box. Again, sales and marketing are there. There's some things for financials and field service, customer service, project service. But our customers are doing something a little bit different. If they logged in and they wanted to see revenue and sales pipelines, it looks a little different now, but still doesn't necessarily meet the mark for the DoD market. Our customers are trying to manage their force readiness and track training and do mission planning. These are the types of activities that a typical DoD organization is looking to automate. And so what we did was take Dynamics as a platform. We use the security model, the web interface, web services, a lot of the underlying components that allow us to build a solution, which is Defense Ready on top of that. What we do then with our customers is we take all those solutions that you saw on the last slide, and we layer in the customer's business process and their service level data. So there's all these Class 1 ERP solutions that customers have to use today. Those solutions are generally stovepipes. The data is not shared between them. It's difficult to answer questions across functional areas. So we take all that service level data and we integrate it into the capabilities in Defense Ready. So it's essentially 3 layers. There's the Dynamics platform, there's Defense Ready, and then there's the business process and the service data. Now, the challenge is if you go look up Dynamics 365 today, there is an online offering. You've probably heard of CRM Online, now it's Dynamics 365 Online. Those offerings today only support up to level 2 for DoD, and so we needed an offering. If we were going to manage all these different activities, we needed something that was more like level 4, level 5 offering. So Defense Ready out of the box looks something like this, and we'll do a demo later so you can see this live. But the idea is that in one platform, a customer can go, they've got access to their workforce data, their training data, medical, asset security, all the different features that they want to use. When they look at a dashboard, it's not going to be a sales dashboard. It's going to be, show me the status of my military workforce, or operations-wise, where do I have people? What types of activities are we supporting? What does my timeline look like for future deployments, or who's deployed too much? In terms of accountability, where are my people today? Where are they going to be over the next X days? Are they doing training? Are they being deployed? Are they participating in exercises? Pull in military, civilians, contractors, give strength reports, show them what their organization is going to look like over the next 90 days based on current trends, or even give them some of the basics. A lot of our customers spend a lot of time just building an org chart in something like Visio or PowerPoint, and we can take that service level data and give them a display that makes sense to them. So there's a lot of different capabilities. We'll cover some of these in a demo, but the idea is that out of the box, we want our customers to be able to use the data in their Class 1 system on a modern platform like Dynamics and get a single view of their organization. So for us, what this meant was moving from a services model, right, building the apps from the ground up and being a services company, to a COT solution, a product company. What this allowed us to do was to standardize the capabilities that we gave to each customer. So now instead of building different apps for different customers, we essentially have one set of capabilities that all of our customers start with. We have a consistent user experience. So whether our customers are looking at their assets or managing their personnel or tracking training, they have a consistent set of features in terms of managing the data, exporting the data, doing what they need to do with it. In terms of our support, we're able to standardize that as well because our customers are on the same platforms, they all have the same capabilities. And from a development standpoint, all of our features are built using the same tools. So we don't have features where, only John can support that because he's the one developer who built it. All of our tools, all of our patterns and practices are standardized across the entire product, so we can standardize our support. And then finally, we also standardize procurement, so we made it easier for customers to buy this. So instead of buying services now, they're buying a COTS product. So for us, what that meant as a company is that, hey, we had achieved zero variance with these 4 items. Only problem was it's not exactly true because we had to deploy on premise. So if you take Defense Ready and the first iteration of it, we would go and deploy this on site. And what we found was anything that we depended on that could fail absolutely would fail with customers. And that could have been any number of stories that we've got. I mean, system resources. We had customers who would give us virtual machines with 2 gigs of RAM when we required 8 or 16. You have to fight over basic resources that should just be commodities. In terms of networking, we had some customers who, for whatever reason, were routing traffic from one building up and down the East Coast before it got to our servers. Yeah, nothing that we could necessarily control, but that's something that we certainly depend on, and that would fail. We had several customers on site, group policy, things that they'd push out settings that would break our application or potentially change the way that our customers are able to access it. Operations. We had one customer literally delete their production database. And these are things that no matter what happens, any of these dependencies, they make our product look bad. The end user doesn't necessarily care where it came from. But whatever the issue was, that was a bad experience for the customer. So for us, what we wanted to do was to see how many of these things could we take responsibility for, right? And when we moved to the cloud, we would be allowed to do that. Now, our first foray into the cloud was MilCloud. It was really the only opportunity for us a couple years ago. This is a provide service, but what we found right away is that it's not really consumption-based. So for a company like us to want to stand up a cloud offering, we had to pretty much pay for everything that we were using. There was no, hey, turning some virtual machines off, paying less, or going down or up on storage. It was all very rigid, so it was difficult for us to really get the best price for the services that we were getting. We also didn't have a whole lot of options to the virtual machine or the storage types. So one thing about the CRM architecture, it requires some pretty fast disk I/O and premium storage, in this case in Azure. There was no such option for us when we went over to MilCloud. And there were a lot of other features that were lacking. We basically had virtual machines, networking, and storage, and that was about it. So we tried that out, but ultimately what we decided to do was wait for Azure to get the L4 and L5 accreditation. So Defense Ready Cloud 1.0, which is where we are today, is on Azure. Our benefits here, first of all, it's consumption-based billing. So if we're not using machines, we're not using resources, we're not paying for them, right? It's an immediate impact to the billing. And so we can scale up and scale down, and we'll see our billing follow in suit. The other piece is that recently they announced the L5 support for the platform. Now, I'll come back to that because it doesn't mean that Defense Ready is L5 just by the nature of Azure being L5. But it gives us a place where we can build off of where we know at least a handful of the controls have been already implemented by the Azure portion of our stack. There's also a large variety of compute and storage options. So for us, again, CRM needed the premium storage, SSD-based storage. We have that. Also, a lot of good features in terms of the redundancy and copying those files and having multiple copies all over the different data centers. And then also features added continuously. I mean, there are several announcements recently of features now available to us that weren't available a week ago that we can now take advantage of. So what this does for us is now those dependencies are inside of our control, right? So in terms of the system resources, we can allocate what we need. In terms of the networking, at least on our side of things, we'll have control over what's going on inside of the environment. For customers, group policy, we're handling all the stigging and all the security policy inside of that environment as well. we're also providing the support. So what we end up with is predictable implementation timelines. So even though we're a product company, we are responsible for implementing our product for our customers. We'll get asked all the time, how long does it take? How long does it take to buy Defense Ready, deploy it, get my data in there? And we can answer to a certain extent for our portion of the responsibility. When we're on premise and we depend on other service providers, those pieces are variable. And so now, because we're responsible for more, we can provide more predictable implementation timelines. So for us now, we're closer to zero variance than we were before. So now we can provide a consistent experience, consistent timelines, consistent outcomes for all of our customers. So one of the challenges we came across, though, in the cloud in general was identity. So one of the challenges we wanted to address was we wanted to have no dependencies on the customer environment whatsoever, other than the browser settings that the customer might have to reach our offering. So that's a problem because typically a CRM implementation, Dynamics implementation, requires Active Directory. It requires us to authenticate the user somehow. And your two options with CRM, on-premise anyway, are Windows authentication or claims-based authentication through ADFS. And the challenge that we had was we didn't want to create Windows accounts for our users in the cloud. And in terms of ADFS, we didn't want the customer to have to stand up ADFS in their environment in order to federate with ours. So that basically means we needed claims-based authentication, but we didn't want to leverage the customer's domain. So the answer for us was we created, it's a secondary product we call Re-Identify. It's an STS that works as an identity provider with ADFS, but it prompts for the client certificate, right, versus trying to authenticate with the customer's home realm. So what this does for us is really a couple things. One, it allows us simply to use the CAC or the PIV card as authentication. There's no dependency on the customer network, right? They can simply log in. What we do is we match the properties of the certificate with the data that we have in our system about who the users should be. And then what's nice is because we're using Defense Ready as the store for those users, you'll see in the demo, we have much more than just their username. Right? We have information about what they've been trained to do. We have information about what their security clearance might be. We have information about what organization they work for, what billet they're in. So we can start to provide much more complex claims than just a UPN or a username. So this leaves the door open later for us to really do attribute-based access control, but with local data, because we're not just capturing the service level data, we're also capturing the local data. So what we've done for ourselves is, we've solved the problem of having no dependencies on the customer environment, but we've also given ourselves a rich source of data that we can use to provide access control to our users, and it's all tied back to the client certificate. So it makes things unique for us. Sir?
So the second point, you've already moved ADFS into the Amazon government cloud, so on-prem is no longer a requirement.
Okay. Yeah, so for us now, we have even no dependency on the customer side of things, you guys have ADFS tying into what's your identity provider?
It's still off of the CAC. The actual Active Directory is no longer in.
Right, so the Active Directory is out in Amazon now.
Right.
So
but it's going to the Azure because we're using it for 365.
Yeah.
Still tied to Azure.
So the alternate benefit we have here, which is the additional data, when I get to the demo, all the things that we capture about a person. AD has a couple of attributes about you. Your org symbol, maybe your display name, your rank, those types of things. We're pulling from Class 1 data sources that can give us a little bit more rich data that gives us more of an idea of who this person is. So you may have solved the problem in terms of not needing anything on the customer site, but we still wanted to have something that would give us more information than just simply what's stored in AD about the user. So I mean, it's something that you may not need if you're already out there, but.
If you want to go BYOD, you're going to need that ADFS.
So we still have ADFS. I want to make that clear. So there is ADFS for our side, right? And this is an identity provider that ties into ADFS. So you're still doing that piece, right? But it's just not federating with the customer's Active Directory that's on premise. It can federate. In this case, we can federate just with the CAC alone. Or if you have some other directory, we can add that as an identity provider as well. So it's still claims-based authentication regardless. It's just a matter of what identity provider do we want to use.
How do you handle certificate checking?
So we do that, this service here that reaches out to the the service that's provided in the certificate. It has the URL for the CRL checking, and then we also have offline as well, where we'll download it every now and then and check locally if we don't have access. This is just a basic overview of our service, and it's oversimplified, so I could fit it in one slide. But the point I wanted to make here is simply a matter of how do we scale. And there's two ways that we are able to scale our implementations. One is that you'll see inside of these availability sets, you see multiple VMs, and it's not the actual number here, it's just for effect. But we can certainly either scale the resources on each of these VMs very easily, so bump up the RAM, bump up the CPU, storage. We can also add new VMs inside those availability sets, right, to add more redundancy in there. But the other thing that we decided to do is this entire block on the right, this entire virtual network, is essentially what we refer to internally as a scale group. And we can stamp out an entire new scale group whenever we need, either to support more customers because the scale group has already reached its capacity, or we want to have a new version. So there are new versions of Dynamics every 6 months or so. And rather than pushing that out to all existing customers, we needed a way where we could go ahead and stage the new environment for customers with a new version and then move their databases over one at a time, migrate them into that new version of Dynamics. That way customers aren't forced into an upgrade for a certain version. They'll have plenty of time, and we'll have time to test that out. But the key piece for us building the architecture was how do we build essentially a scale group that over and over again through scripting we can deploy, configure, and have available for new versions or new scale. So it helped us out tremendously to be able to do that. Rather than simply scaling out one deployment, we needed to account for multiple versions that would come out over time. Sir?
So is this architecture implemented for each customer, or is this one architecture and it's a multi-tenancy for each customer?
So it's multi-tenancy, right? And that's one of the benefits we have. So on the Dynamics platform, that's something that's provided by Dynamics, which we're able to leverage. So it's multi-tenant. For each tenant, we can configure the storage differently, right? So we can have isolation between customers in terms of where their data is stored. So on the SQL side of things, that means generally new SQL instances with their own storage accounts to handle all that storage. But this can handle, it's basically a certain number of users that we scale it up to. Right, and based on that, and some tenants may be higher usage than others, so we may choose to move a tenant at some point. But essentially, the idea was to take all of this and make it repeatable over and over again. So we'll have X number of these scale groups over here on the right. It can support multiple customers. The only limitation we have is that within one scale group, it has to be a single version of Dynamics. It's not going to be running multiple versions of Dynamics, right? So that's when we would need to stamp out new ones. So in terms of the controls we have to implement, there's a lot of them. I think it's if you include the controls, the parts, the enhancements, you're looking at roughly 1,000 controls that need to be implemented. Now where we are right now is that we've implemented the majority of these and we're documenting them, going through the process with our SSP to get this through with our existing customers. But there's a lot to consider. So we're not only doing the NIST security and the PII and PHI controls. There's the SRG level 5 security and privacy controls, and that's mainly because we're handling a lot of different personnel information. You look at the different types of data that we capture, and it's going to potentially impact us for PII and PHI. So we're basically taking the route of doing every possible control that we could under the SRG L5 plus all of the underlying controls that they inherit from. So in terms of the roadmap, one of the things that we really looked forward to was the idea that over time, Azure is going to add a lot of the services that you see in commercial over on DoD, and we want to make use of that. So during the demo, I'll show you some of the types of data that we would use with these features, but certainly machine learning and Azure analysis services, those are things that we'd like to turn on as soon as they're available. We're capturing a lot of Class 1 data. We're capturing a lot of local data from these different commands. We want to be able to point some of these advanced analytics at this data so that customers can really get the benefit that we can't necessarily provide with out-of-the-box tools that come with Dynamics or Defense Ready. So I want to switch over to a demo and just show you what this all looks like so you can get a sense of what we're talking about here. So this is a demo system of Defense Ready. So this is not customer data. This is a fake organization. We call it US Anycom, just so it can represent a kind of generic joint organization. So it's all fake data. I'm also logged in as an administrator, so I can see and have access to all these capabilities. But generally speaking, a customer who buys Defense Ready is looking for a couple of different things. Either one, they're looking to consolidate data from Class 1 systems that are disparate and difficult to report on. Or two, they have local business applications that they either need to retire, that they need to move to the cloud, or that they need integration with that aforementioned data. So we'll go through some common capabilities that our customers use, and then we can get into some of the more obscure ones if there's questions. But the idea here is that these tiles, they represent the different functional areas in an organization. All this is configurable, though, so customers will change the menu based on the features that they want to use and the things that matter to their organization. The first one I'll show, though, are the dashboards. Let's see if I can get my tabs to switch. So as you saw in the demo or in the slides, typical CRM out of the box is going to give you dashboards for things like sales and marketing and whatnot. Because we're pulling in data from different types of systems, though, we can provide different types of views. So for instance, for a military organization, you've got a lot of turnover. You're going to have folks PCSing every couple of years or so. So you're going to want to potentially track your projected losses. I'll get my VM here a second to catch up with me. But the idea is that if you're a joint organization, or maybe you've got reservists and active duty and National Guard in one system, it can be difficult to report. We can report across all of them. So you can see, for instance, in April 2017, I've got 726 losses. Again, joint organization, AnyCom wants to know, break that down for me by component. And it's easy for a business user, not necessarily somebody who's an analyst, but an actual business user who's, maybe they work in HR, maybe they're responsible for this data. They can quickly get their answers. So if I want to see, for instance, I got 152 regular Navy losses in April 2017. Let's break those down by any field in the system. So as customers add their own fields to the system, as new fields get added to the Defense Ready platform over time, they'll be able to filter by those. And I can get a quick list here by pay rate. Who am I losing in April 2017? If I go one step further, I can actually get the data that we're talking about. So for a lot of our customers, again, if you're just someone who works in one of these administrative units, you might want to see who are the 9 E5s, regular Navy, that we're losing in April 2017. And I've got them here by name. If I want to, I can export those to Excel. I can run workflows on these, notify these folks via mail merge. It gives me the data that I need right away. So I don't have to build every last chart, every last view in the system. I can start to brief off of this dynamically, with the starting point being that dashboard. Now, one of the great things is that all these tools, they're aimed at business users, right? So there's other sessions that you'll see with deep analytics. You can plug Power BI into this. You can plug a lot of those analytics tools into this data. But we provide natively a lot of features that normal end users would get value out of day in and day out. And it doesn't just have to be for workforce. I mean, we've got different dashboards that we've set up here. Common one is training. Show me everybody who hasn't taken their IA training. Every annual year you've got to do that. And we've got charts to show you who's enrolled, who hasn't taken a certain type of course, or even operations. Show me, in this case, I've got how many people, I've got 1,200 people on mission support TDY. What countries do I have those folks in today? A typical data source for us is something like DTS that might have some of that data. We also use Defense Ready to do some deployment projections as well. But what you can do is you can look in here, and you can see by name who's in a particular country. And we've had lots of customers who can't answer this question without buying a task management solution so that they can ask the question of all their subordinates and all their subordinates to get a list back. And I'm going to look here and see who are the 56 people who are in Germany right now. What are their names? What are their deployment dates? All the information that we need based on my security roles. I'm able to see this and get these answers right away. And I can continue to drill down on any of this data. So for your average business user, we try to put out a lot of capability that they can use without having to have a data science degree. Now, there's a lot of other views that we provide out of the box. You saw some of these in the PowerPoint. I'll explain what some of these are. A lot of cases, our customers have issues with daily accountability. So what we do with Defense Ready, again, it's partially service level data and it's partially local data that can be entered directly into our application. But for instance, if we have training records coming from a training system, or you've used our training module to create a course or a class or a training exercise, these events can show up here. But really the benefit here is that you've got contractors, military, civilian, all in one view. So if I want to see exactly what everybody's doing in my organization, when I log in, I'm tied to a certain position in that organization. My roles then give me scope to my organization, maybe my organization and below, and I can see these individuals and what they're doing. So later, if we need this data to do some types of calculations or to figure out who's available to source a requirement, I've got all this information in one place. So again, we can use it for the basic calendaring to know, maybe for daily muster, who's here, who's not, but I can also use this in planning later on. This is what the typical data view looks like, though, and this probably doesn't look too attractive. It's just a data sheet view, right? I mean, it's anything that you'd see normally in a SharePoint list or Excel Online. You've got a lot of the same basic features instead of searching and filtering, but the benefit is in the alternate views of this data. So for instance, these are deployment records. They have a location field on here. So I wanted to highlight the fact that we can take data and extract it in something like KML. So maybe I want to take all those deployment records, and this is something common that a lot of our customers use. Take that deployment data, produce a KML file, and then pull it up in a map viewer where I can see exactly where folks are. So I had certain location records in here defined in the system. And again, for operations personnel to be able to get a KML view of all their personnel, their locations, their deployment dates, and again, you can configure whatever query you like. These give them capabilities and views that they may not have, and especially combining data from something like DTS with your local projections and local data to be able to produce these reports. So a couple other features we'll hit here. In terms of purse tempo, and this is some basic analytics that we do. One of the problems one of our customers had, and this was SOCOM headquarters, they had a purse tempo issue. So they had a lot of different components, a lot of different subcomponents, layers all the way down the chain. They were deploying folks quite a bit, actually, over the last few years. And personnel were breaking their purse tempo range. And so that's basically in a 730-day window, try not to deploy somebody more than 480 days. So what we were able to do is take their data, again, combine their local projections along with historical data from DTS, and give them a view like this, where they could see, based on my organizational structure, how many people have broken the threshold over here of 480 days. So I've got some unit here that's got 3 people who are over 481 days in that window. And again, it could be across all different services. In this case, I've got a couple Army folks and Navy personnel here as well. I can see that they've busted by a handful of days. And again, some of this data is looking a year back, some of it's looking a year forward. So we may have the ability to impact some of this. So in their case, they're looking in Defense Ready. We're combining the data historically and future data, and then giving them a view of exactly what's going on with this person and what's impacting them. Now, in this case, what you see here is the chart. They're exceeding the threshold of 480 days. If I scroll down here, though, what I can see are all the different events that have occurred that have already caused this person to bust. Now, in this case, this is happening in the past, so there's not a whole lot we can do for this person, but we could play a what-if game. And this is where we're able to take data and say, okay, well, what if instead of 5 months, we brought that particular event down to just 1 month, or we could have just removed it at all. And I can recalculate those projections to see what would have happened. And in this case, that would have kept the person from busting through that threshold. So, again, they're basic capabilities that allow a normal end user, somebody who has to make these decisions, to actually use the system and determine what they need to determine. It's not stopping you from still pointing more advanced tools at this data, leveraging it, extracting it, doing other things with it. But we try to provide capabilities that your different functionals across a military enterprise are going to use. And this is a good example of a real-world scenario that our customers needed. They needed to provide Class 1 data from DTS for historical purposes with the data that we're capturing in Defense Ready natively as a business application for mission projections, combine the data, allow them to analyze it, and figure out exactly why somebody might break a threshold or why they maybe shouldn't be participating in a certain capability. Now, some of the other things that we do, oops, looks like I broke out a new window there. Some of the things we do, it's a little bit more in terms of just saving people time. I mean, certainly anything that has a hierarchy, we've got native UI that allows you to model that in terms of charts. We've got lots of customers who, before Defense Ready, are still producing org charts on PowerPoint or even Visio. We can do a lot of that natively in Defense Ready, and it allows you to even navigate the different charts, see which units report to other units. You can customize what columns come back here on your charts, but it makes it very easy for the average end user to get the views that they need without having to break into other applications. We do the same thing for the positions as well. So we generally pull in manning documents. It's another source of data that we integrate with, so things like FMTS or AMD in the Navy or FMS Web in the Army will pull in that manning document, and again, we can model that here. The great thing about this data from the manning documents is, A, they give us a chain of command. So later when we have capabilities that need to route something around the organization, say an award, an evaluation, even just a document that we want to produce, a form that we want to sign and send up. We have all the context that we need in order to do that. The other thing that we're able to do is more of what we call kind of in the world of talent management, knowing what positions require what types of training, what types of training plans should we be assigning to these individuals, and even in the world of asset management, what assets should this person have? So if the deputy commander is authorized a laptop or a mobile phone, we'd be able to model that in Defense Ready and know when that person comes in what types of equipment we should be issuing them. Now, how we track people, I mean, this is one of our most important features. We work with a lot of joint organizations. We also work with single service. We even work with some just plain civilian organizations. But the idea is that we want to track each type of person in their native tongue. So out of the box in Defense Ready, we track contractors, civilians, and the different services all separately. They all have their own lingo. They all have potentially their own business rules, their own workflows. And they certainly, in a joint organization, have different people who are responsible for managing and maintaining those people. So we do that natively out of the box, and then each one of these types of records will potentially roll up into views that we have across all the different services. So I've got a tab here open for Army personnel. If I look in one of these, they're going to have all Army lingo. It's going to map all those fields that come from the Class 1 systems. In this case, this would probably come from TAPDB. And some of these fields, though, aren't going to come from those systems. So I want to point out, we are business applications. Some data gets set locally, so they can set who the person's rater is. Any other local fields that they want to set, they can actually input those into Defense Ready. We've got audit logs, so we know who made what change and when. And then what we can do with this data is, we can use it for reporting purposes, but we can also use it to fill out forms. So we have a huge forms library. A lot of our customers, they have several different types of PDF forms or even Pure Edge forms from some of the legacy data that they want to fill out. We'll take a sample one like a U.S. passport renewal. I can take the data from Defense Ready and we can map it to a PDF file. So in this case, again, local business process, I need to renew my passport or whatever the local form may be. And I'll show you this one because it's incredibly annoying to fill out by hand. But you see every single letter in this person's name is another field. And what we've been able to do is take the data, captured in Defense Ready, map it to this form here, but it's still editable. So if there are additional fields that people need to provide, they can still type in this form. If there's a digital signature, they could still sign the document, but the data all came from Defense Ready. So again, it's another way to make use of that data. If we're going to pull it in, if we're going to capture the local data, we want to make sure that we leverage it to the best of our ability and use it for as many different things as we can. One other piece I wanted to highlight, just in terms of the average business user, to be able to cross functional boundaries based on your permissions and get some of this ad hoc reporting that you need. So again, we're not saying that this is advanced analytics, but it's things that end users can actually use day to day. So say, for instance, I manage the workforce and I need to know, show me everybody who speaks a certain language. So what you can do here, every page has this ad hoc query tool called Advanced Find, and I can come down here and I can draw relationships, in this case from my active workforce members, to the language proficiency records that we have. And I'll say I want to know everybody who's active in my workforce, again, contractor, civilian, military, doesn't matter to me at this point. And I want to know everybody who speaks, and we'll say Spanish. So it makes it easy, this little process here that I'm going through, fairly simple for your average user to learn and use day to day. I can run those results, I can see what comes back. I've got 607 personnel in this, it's about a 40,000 person organization. I've got 607 people who speak Spanish. I can go back, I can change what columns show up, I can change any of the other properties about the view, but most importantly, I can save this. I don't have to do this over and over again. So I'll just call this my Tech Summit view. So I don't have to build that every single time, and in fact, what I can do later, if that's an important view that other people in my organization need, and as an average business user, I can share that view with other members so that they can look at it too. So in this case, my default view is active workforce files, but you see in this list down here, I've got my views, I've got my Tech Summit view saved, that's something that I personally built. I can run that view and I get my 607 personnel right away. So it gives these users a place where they can conduct business, they can also build their own views, their own reports, but they can also do charts. So over here on the right, every single view, again, doesn't matter if I'm looking at assets or personnel records or anything that we capture in Defense Ready. I can build charts, and it's fairly simple to do this as well. So it's fairly easy in terms of training to show a user how to do this. So I've got my view, which are personnel who speak Spanish, and now what I'll do is I'll create a chart that will break those people down by, we'll do something easy, like service branch. So from this view here, I'll simply choose, we'll just choose service branch, and we will choose to have that in a pie chart. So again, average kind of HR type person might want to make this query. They can say workforce by service branch. Oops, I've already got one of those, so we'll save it as a copy. And now what I've got as a part of my interface, again, I don't have to build this one again either, is now I've got a pie chart that's going to work against my 607 records and give me the same view that we saw before. And these charts are dynamic as well. So if I want to know who are the 40 Marines who speak Spanish, I can click that portion of the chart and load up who those records are. So again, from your business user perspective, they don't have to call IT every time they need a new report. They don't have to call somebody when they want to switch what columns show up. They can even share these with other users. So in this case here, I built that view, I built that chart. If I'd like to share this with other users, it's as simple as coming back in here, choosing saved views. I find my Tech Summit view, and I can share it. And what's great about this is you can share it with users and teams, and again, the users are mapped back to our defense-ready users, so you can choose them by name. But what we also do is based on your manning document, we build teams automatically. So say I wanted to share this as a joint organization, so they have a J1. Maybe I want to share this with all J1 org admins. It's not sharing the data with them if they don't already have a security role that lets them see that data. I haven't just granted them access to the data, but I've granted them access to the definition of my view. So this view will run on their version of the data. They might get different results, but the definition will be the same. So it makes this much more collaborative in terms of how users interact with the system. Again, it's not the burden isn't on IT to make every single configuration and every single customization, right? Your power users, your business users can actually do a lot of that themselves. Now, a couple other things we'll go over. Wanted to highlight, we highlighted the forms, we highlighted some ad hoc query. There's another version of ad hoc query that we have though. I'll zoom in here in a minute so we can see what we're looking at. The idea though is whether I'm looking at people or assets or positions or even finance budget items, whatever it may be, sometimes looking at rows and columns of text isn't as helpful. So in this case what we've done is I've pointed a query at the entire military population of US CENTCOM, so it's about 40,000 personnel. We do track photos for people. We track photos for other types of items as well. And so what we've done is we've represented each record in my query with a tile with their photo that represents who that person is. And this helps out quite a bit when we're trying to do things like maybe we don't exactly know who we're looking for, or I need a little bit more information. Maybe it's a little bit more subjective what I'm looking for. So for instance, maybe I'm looking across my entire military population, and let's find somebody who's got a master's degree. What's nice is, and it may be hard to see in the back, but I already know there's 377 individuals. Before I even filter this view, I know exactly how many folks I have with that attribute. So I can filter that, it'll come out and show me, okay, these are the people now, 377 folks who now meet that criteria. Let's go ahead and look any other facet that we have. So customer-specific fields show up here as well, which is nice, makes that more configurable for you. So let's look for, maybe I'm looking for an 04, 03, 02. We'll select a couple here so we get some folks back. So these are all the folks who currently meet the criteria, and we can continue to filter down as much as we want. But what we can also do is group this by some other field. So in this case, maybe we'll group them by what organization they belong to. And I'll just use, instead of the detailed one, we'll use their kind of unit symbol here. Right, so we can group the results back based on what organizations they belong to, and then we'll drill in here. I want somebody from one of these two. And eventually we get all the way down and we can choose a person. These photos are blurry, so we pulled them off the internet. We don't want to use anybody's data. But you can see all of their attributes over here on the right. So we make it easy. If you're an average business user, you're looking for somebody with a certain education level, with a certain rank, or they're from a certain state or have a certain skill. It makes it very easy for a normal user to consume this data and consume this service to get the information that they need. And if they have something, for instance, they want to see, okay, show me everybody who also was born in California. All these attributes are clickable, so that then it can go back out, filter everything, and show me that same breakdown, the same sorting and grouping that I had, but with that filter instead of the ones that I had chosen before. So again, we can point this type of capability at any data that we capture, whether it came from a service level system or it was captured locally. there's quite a bit too. I mean, we've shown some administrative functions, things that people who manage other people do, but there's also a whole section that we term My Data. There's a lot of different things that every person in an organization would have tracked about them in Defense Ready. And so this area here makes those capabilities accessible to those end users, so it's more or less of a self-service portal. Some of those things, for instance, maybe, and we haven't gotten to training yet, but you can assign SCORM compliant courseware through Defense Ready and then have a person take that. So some customers, they have local courses that they want folks to take. Again, I'll use the IA training as my example, but you could go in and see that, yes, I have not completed this course, and as an end user, I can go ahead and decide to launch that course. And we'll track all sorts of things. We'll track the success status, the completion status. You'll even see there's a field in there for total time, so we know how many seconds somebody spent looking at the course or participating in it. And of course, it'll, if it's a SCORM compliant course, it'll launch, give you, the ability to take this test, and all that data is communicated back through Defense Ready. So it's an interesting way to push content out to folks. We've got tools that we use with a lot of customers that allow them to convert PowerPoint documents or other briefings into SCORM compliant courses so that they can deliver it through Defense Ready. But if you're an end user and you have to take training or you have to participate in an evaluation or an award, there's a whole section here where folks can participate in those types of activities. So for instance, maybe an award was routed to me. I can see this award package is in my queue. It gives me a nice and easy way to consume the document, which was likely produced by Defense Ready. Any of the citations that have been uploaded, and then make my selection to reject or approve. So there's a lot of capabilities here. I mean, all in all, it's about 200 to 300 capabilities, depending on what features a customer's turned on, that they can use in terms of the workplace and the other management modules. We also have a self-reporting capability. So one of the challenges we run into quite a bit is that while we pull in data from service level systems, in some cases, some of these things either may not be considered as official records from those systems, or they just simply might be local records that haven't been captured before. And so there's a whole section where individuals can self-report, whether it's education or proficiencies, prior awards or assignments, things that might be out of scope of those service level systems, but customers may still want to capture them, and we have the capability to do that natively. Wanted to highlight a couple of the other types of solutions that we have. I mean, we focus a little bit on the workforce, how we manage people. We do quite a bit of in-service recruiting for a lot of our customers, for the special operations groups, and track other things like routing documents, passports, tracking their comm devices and directories. We do things like recall roster events to allow for mass recalls to go out. Again, we have all the information we need to know who works in what organizations, what their phone numbers are, what their directory listings are, how to reach them, who they report to. So these types of things we can automate right away, and I'll show you how these types of things work. Generally, a local business process in Defense Ready is going to involve a little bit of data entry. So in this case, I'm kicking off a recall. It's happening today. I'll provide data for emergency response, and we'll say that this is going to start, in this case, we'll start at the headquarters. So we'll choose Anycom headquarters. And when I save this, it's going to look at the entire organizational structure. So again, I've pulled, generally customers are going to pull that in from their Class 1 manpower system to know what organizational structure they have, who works in those organizations, comes from the HR systems. And then what we can do is at each level, we're able to go in and initiate an event. So in this case here, I didn't do the whole suborgs, but it simply pulls in the 73 personnel who are currently assigned to this organization. If I'm in charge of doing this recall, I can call Kale in here, and maybe I called Levi, and they were both accounted for successfully. I can quickly mark them as accounted for, and then locally what we have is a count of how many people have we accounted for, how many are outstanding, recalled. So it's a fairly mundane business process in terms of what the customer's doing. But a lot of our customers, pre-Defense Ready, are building apps to do this. They're building something in Access or SharePoint to do these things. They have to re-enter all their data from some other system just to track it. So we're able to pull this in automatically and leverage all that Class 1 data to automate a small local business process like this without having a customer build an app, maintain the app, tie it in with data sources. It comes out of the box this way. A couple other things I'll highlight here as well. We track training for a lot of organizations, and there's two different types of training that we generally focus on. One is kind of the service level data. What has somebody been trained to do? And so I can look at somebody's training file, as we call it, and it's going to pull in all the ancillary training. So when was the last time you took ethics training, or when was the last time you took your SEER training? Some of those things are handled by the services, and so that's generally something that we integrate with. Down below, there are things that happen at the local level that we capture natively with Defense Ready. So things like continuing professional education for our customers who have to maintain a certain number of points over a certain number of years. There's local assignments, so maybe you've defined a training plan for your organization or for a certain type of position. In this case, NECOM has defined a military annual training requirements plan and an organizational training plan for a certain organization. Those have been assigned to Senior Master Sergeant Aaron here. You've also got things like qualification levels, course assignments. So this allows those customers to capture that local data that otherwise, again, they're typically building applications for, or you know, worse, they have Excel spreadsheets and Access databases floating around for this stuff. But the other piece of training that we capture is classroom-based training. So a lot of our customers, they're either kind of got a specialty discipline, or they maybe they're some type of investigator, or they've got some type of class that they hold locally. And there's a whole series of capabilities that allow our customers to define the class events, basically make a template out of the different courses that they offer, manage the instructors, the classroom schedules, everything that they need to track who's going through what classes and boil those back down to the personnel who are available and who need to take those classes. There are other pieces in here as well. This is a little bit more detailed, but things like our customers who are airborne, there's quite a bit in terms of refreshing their capabilities that they've got to do on a daily basis or a monthly basis or so. There's PT tests and weapons qualifications that a lot of our customers have to track, and we produce all the appropriate forms for those things. So it's not just about capturing the data, it's helping you meet the requirement and produce the forms and the reports that are required. For medical readiness, a lot of our customers are just pulling in high-level data. We're not necessarily tracking the day-to-day, kind of PHI type information. It's just red, yellow, green, is somebody ready? But for some of our customers, they do full patient care, and for those customers, we do have capabilities that can track all the care provider schedules. So, what vaccinations and exams are we doing? What types of medical visits do we have scheduled? Who's available to handle those types of requests? And so we can pull that data in, allow them to capture the local visits, and then reconcile that with the data they're capturing at the service level. From a finance perspective, we have capabilities to manage special pay. There's budgeting features as well. We can also pull in data from credit card statements and cell phone statements to know what types of costs are we incurring, how can we tie that back to the org structure and know where that's coming from. And then also in terms of assets, this is something where customers generally have an ERP solution that's going to tell them what type of assets they have. And so they may not need to execute all of our different transactions and do property book management and catalog management. But what we try to do is tie this back to the different positions. And so we do that through basis of issue, where customers can determine the different kits that they have. And so maybe for a research employee, I have different types of equipment than for my standard kit that I issue to everybody. And what we can do with those basis of issue plans is decide, based on who gets these, exactly what types of items they should be issued and from what types. And so I can see the standard kit that I've got here is you get 3 boots, you get 2 duffel bags, 5 nylon, some type of clothing there. And I can see exactly what type of equipment we should be issuing to everybody. And then we can predict out what types of things we need to reorder and what our asset load should be. From a security perspective, we track security data, and again, a lot of customers, they're going to have data in something like JPass that we can pull in from in terms of clearance levels and investigations. But there are a lot of things that happen at the local level where, again, customers are building their own solutions. They're building SharePoint lists and Access databases to pull in things like what types of investigations are going on, what type of security incidents do we have. I'll scroll down here. We can see some of these. What special access programs is somebody read onto, security caveat assignments, sensitive items that they've been issued. So there's a lot of things here that we track in each area of Defense Ready that would be considered local data, local things that customers can retire their applications and use instead. And then there are some capabilities that are tied back to those service level systems that are more of a data integration. All in all, though, what we're trying to do as we go around the application here, we're trying to get a picture of readiness. And I'll show you what we do for some customers. When we look at readiness, the idea is that every customer is a little bit different with how they're going to make their local determination. And so what we try to help customers do is figure out, okay, based on the data that we've pulled in and the data that you've captured locally, can we quantify readiness for each functional area that they have? And they can rename these different areas, and then we can come up with, using our workflow engine, come up with different equations that will essentially amount to a number for each one of these metrics, and then come up with a master equation to come up with the overall number. But what matters most to the organization, and how can we help them automatically report on that and allow customers to now report on this? And that's what we're ultimately trying to do. So not every customer is going to use our logistics app or our security app or training, but for the pieces that they do use, we try to help them then automate and automatically pick up a lot of the different metrics that they need in order to score somebody and figure out if they're truly ready. Let's see here. So the last piece I wanted to highlight, and this is something that comes out of the box with Dynamics, but it's something that we leverage quite a bit in order to configure Defense Ready to meet customers' requirements. And this is something in the customization section where there's an entire solution model. So while Defense Ready is a large solution that has a lot of capabilities, every customer is going to have their own solutions that help them manage the business process that's specific to them. So in this case, I've got a sample solution here for a customer who was actually doing quite a bit in terms of parachute packing. Not something that we come out of the box with necessarily, but something that they wanted to model on top of Defense Ready. And the benefit for them was the people involved in parachute packing were the people that we were already capturing in Defense Ready from the Class 1 data source. They didn't have to build an app and get all that data in there. So they wanted to leverage Defense Ready as their baseline. And what they were able to do is build entities, web resources, dashboards, reports. They modeled it all, mostly point and click, using the solution model in Dynamics, and then applied that solution on top of Defense Ready so they got one consolidated solution that handled their local business process, the things that they needed here, as well as the data that we already captured. I'll just highlight a couple of these components to show you the types of things that the customers are using. This is one called a business process flow, and it helps customers take one of their business processes and define it out into different stages, potentially branching out based on business logic, and decide what types of data they need to capture at each stage. And so this was a sample for this parachute packing process where someone needed to take receipt of the parachute, assemble the main canopy, assemble the reserve canopy, and then send it off to packing. And so using point-and-click tools, we were able to help them model that business process, tie it back to fields that we already had or fields they added to the system, and model this process out so that it was easy for them to maintain. So these are the types of tools that our customers are able to leverage. And for us, it's about creating a product that comes out of the box, capable for customers, but having that just be the starting point. Customers can then maintain and model their own solutions and apply those on top of Defense Ready. So with that, we've been through some of the Defense Ready story. Certainly been through some of our journey that we've done to take this solution off to the cloud. We're a little bit early, but this is the content that we've got. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. And this is the list here, the remaining sessions for the day. Certainly hope this was valuable. And if you have any questions, I'll be here after the session, as well as Greg Myers from Microsoft. So thank you.